Sequel number 30. The Church of Uganda at 150 years, a celebration with the producer Christopher Amos Chikomeko Ntambi. Welcome. This sequel, we shall look at the first revival, the first Christian revival in Uganda. But shortly before that, we shall see a small uprising, and once that was sorted out, a revival happened. And so let's begin. In Buganda, some native Uganda Rifles Army members at Fort Lugard led a rebellion in protest against the mistreatment of local Muslims who had been forced to migrate to Butambala. Now, you will agree with me that majority of these Nubians were therefore, of these Muslims were therefore Nubians and Somalis and people of that kind, with a few Baganda who had the height and therefore had been admitted into the native Uganda Rifles Army at Fort Lugard, the only army that was now allowed in the kingdom. Now, the Buganda Muslim leaders had become Prince Mbogo, a brother to the late Mutesa, and Sheikh Juma. These were put under protective custody. I think Ugandans, you understand this very well. Police protective custody. And the forces at Fort Lugard thought of using the Maxim gun again, this time on their own, but in a defensive way. Now, having regrouped, the former Muslim military faction soldiers had attacked sometimes in July 1893, and a real war ensued. So these civil wars were not yet over. They were still fighting for political power, although Prince Kabaka Rashid Kalima was already dead. Now, 5 were killed during this unrest, and with the threat of the Maxim gun, they gave up and were disarmed. Now, the Fort Lugard leader, who was a Muslim and who had led them into rebellion, was called Salim Bey, and together with several other Nubian soldiers were put in jail on Nsazi Island. This is the island where Mwanga had wanted to kill both Christian and Muslims during the Civil War of 1888 of 1888. That island was not very far from Entebbe. However, it was not very safe for the people who were at Fort Lugard, so they decided to send Salim Bey far away in Zanzibar, where he could end up as a prisoner. And so the journey began, passing through the Tanzanian route. Unfortunately, he died. He died en route. I have no idea what happened to him. The Bazungu's stories there are very difficult to prove whether they are right or wrong. Now, in October 1893, Bishop Tucker, who was at Fredericktown, left for England, and he wanted to put his case to the new government in England to think about turning Uganda into a British protectorate. Now, on arrival there, he found a report on the bombing of Rubaga by the Imperial British Company, Captain Lugard. And the British government had already received a report handed over to them by the Imperial British Company, and the British government had decided to make it, not to release it for the public. It was not to be for public consumption. However, they agreed that the Roman Catholic Church needed to be compensated, so they approved a huge compensation, which they sent out. Colonel MacDonald, on return to Buganda, carried a very fat check. It was a check of 10,000 sterling pounds. Imagine 10,000 sterling pounds of that time. I can assure you that even 10,000 sterling pounds of this time is quite a heavy amount. But this one is 1893, a check of 10,000 sterling pounds. I was making a small calculation using the inflation rates of Great Britain, because they are well documented, all the way from the 1800s, and I stopped at in the year 2010. Now this is slightly over 10 years ago, and I was using those rates to do a calculation, and after applying all those inflation rates, the average ones of course, I ended up with a figure in 2020 of sterling pounds 815,000. Now at a uniform rate of about 5,000 per sterling pound today, that would end up in something like 6.5 billion Uganda shillings today. So the compensation, in other words, all I'm saying is that it was huge. It was a huge compensation. The missionaries at Rubaga, having been satisfied with the compensation of their bombing of their site, they were happy. They were happy, and they were therefore able to start a new church, mission church. They demolished their fourth one and began on a fifth one, and it was a little bit more lasting. As a matter of fact, that one lasted for almost 7 years. As for the Muslims, Mackinon ordered for Busuju, which had been rejected by the Muslims, to be occupied by the Roman Catholics. Yeah. And he also ordered that these Nubians, since they had become funny now, they are now fighting on behalf of the Muslims, he decided also to split them up. He first of all ordered that the camp, the Fort Jerry camp in Kabarore, should be closed completely, and all Nubian soldiers be split between Bombo, Jinja, and Chibera. 3 spots: Bombo in Buganda, Jinja in Busoga, and Kibera among the Fort Smith area, which we call Nairobi today. Now, he also, this Captain MacDonald of the Imperial Company, British Imperial Company, also asked that the Kabaka Mwanga formalize the gifts he gave to the Roman Catholics by signing these deeds of gift of Rubaga, of Wokesa Hill, and other places. That is the way the Bazungu do things, so he wanted it formalized that way. And in his presence, all that was done, so things became a little bit legal. So now, with all that happening, then something happens, a Christian revival. Now, this was a missionary called Pilkington. He was unwell for some time and wished to recuperate. He wanted to recuperate when he was alone. So he went to a small island in Lake Victoria near Busoga called Kome. He carried a book called Spiritual Power, written by evangelist David de Tamil, an Indian. As he read the book, away from company, even the local people on the island, he was away from them. He was really alone to hear what the Lord had to say. Now, he says that he learned from that book that the spiritual power was a necessity as far as salvation was concerned. So he went and prayed for that. He realized that the Holy Spirit had been around, yes, around him, but not in him. Well, according to him. He then received the revelation while on Kome Island of the Holy Spirit in him. God was revealing to him that Buganda needed the Holy Spirit and that he was to start a revival within the Church of Uganda, which was called the Native Church of Uganda. Pilkington returned to Namirembe on the 7th of December 1893 and told everyone about his revival. When he preached, many people, including fellow missionaries, had a conversion of souls. So at Namirembe, several special mission services were held, one after the other. Indeed, the Holy Spirit poured unto the people, led by Reverend Roscoe, Reverend Miller, Reverend Like, and over 200 natives were changed in a great spiritual revival. Now, the mission which was Karma Convention on the 8th and the 9th and the 10th of December 1893, had a very good effect, and the Holy Spirit worked in the midst of the people. Pilkington wrote at that time that God had enabled him to see that for a long time he's been working with his own strength, and consequently there had been no power in his life and very little blessing. But now, after this spiritual outpowering, he thought, and in his words, I have been brought to see that his command be filled with the Spirit, inasmuch laid upon me as it was upon the Ephesians, and that power has been placed at my disposal to appropriate. He had regained a feeling that was not usual. Now, revival made a difference in Pilkington's life and work, for as he felt he was full of joy compared to his earlier depression, which had engulfed him. Bishop Tucker confirms this in his own book, that when he was in England, he received the news of the revival in Uganda in a letter to him by Pilkington. And Bishop Tucker says in his book that indeed, when he was last in Uganda, and that was June 1893, Pilkington was in severe depression and even refused to join the other missionaries in their last noon gate prayers, which were committing the bishop and his entourage for a safe return journey to the coast via Tanganyika. So that depression is confirmed that he suffered it, Pilkington, and then of course that's why he went to Kome Island, and at Kome Island what happened, which we now call the first revival in Uganda. Now in December 1893, Colonel Colville invaded Bunyoro Kingdom, and as the Uganda, of course using the Uganda Rifles military men, they marched through Singo, that is Mityana basically, and all the way to Mubende. And while there in Mityana, the soldiers met missionaries Fisher and Gatha. The revival began by Pilkington saw a chance to spread, and so Pilkington decided to move with the fighting soldiers. He requested to move with them in order to spread the revival wherever he passed, attracting thousands. Now, the end result of Pilkington being allowed to accompany the military was the setting up of congregations under trees, under shades, and so the demand for native teachers increased in Singo, Mubende area. And what happened in Singo with the revival spread to Kyadondo and also spread to Chagwe counties. And basically, let us stop there for this particular sequel number 30. We shall pick it up from there tomorrow, still in the year 1893. May the good Lord bless us all.